Either you take responsibility or I'll destroy you.
They say the delivery room is where miracles happen. They don't mention the nightmares. I'm Nick Renner, 40 years old, restaurant general manager, and I've seen my share of disasters. Kitchen fires, health inspectors on power trips, drunk customers throwing punches over medium-rare steaks. But nothing prepared me for what happened in that sterile white room at Briarwood General Hospital on a Tuesday morning in March. My wife, Marissa, had been in labor for 14 hours. 14 hours of her gripping my hand like she was trying to crush every bone, screaming at me like this was somehow my fault, which, technically, I guess it was. Takes two to tango, as my brother Tom always says. "Push, Mrs. Renner," Dr. Shu encouraged, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks around the edges. The guy had delivered half the babies in Briarwood over the past decade, but something was off. His hands were shaking. Marissa's face was red and twisted with effort. Even in pain, even after hours of labor, she was still beautiful. That's what everyone always said about my wife. Beautiful Marissa, with her perfect blonde hair and her fitness instructor body. Beautiful Marissa, who taught spin classes at Elite Fitness and had half the married men in town drooling over her. "I can see the head," Dr. Shu announced, but his voice cracked on the last word. That's when I noticed the nurse's face. She'd gone white as the hospital sheets. Her eyes were wide, fixed on whatever was happening between my wife's legs, and she looked like she might throw up or faint or both. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping closer to get a better view. Dr. Shu's head snapped up. His eyes met mine, and I'll never forget the look of pure terror in them. He mouthed 3 words that made my blood freeze. "Run. Just run." But I didn't run. I stepped closer, craned my neck to see what had everyone so spooked. What I saw made my knees buckle. The baby, if you could call it that, was wrong. Horribly, impossibly wrong. Where there should have been arms, there were twisted stumps. The head was misshapen, too large on one side, too small on the other. And the skin, Christ, the skin looked like it had been burned or melted. "Let me see my baby!" Marissa screamed, trying to lift her head. "Let me see him!" Dr. Shu moved quickly, blocking her view with his body. "Mrs. Renner, please lie back. We need to—" "What's wrong with it?" I whispered. The doctor grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Mr. Renner, I need you to leave. Now, don't ask questions. Just go." But I couldn't move. I stood there staring at this thing that was supposed to be my child, this nightmare that had somehow grown inside my wife's body. And one thought kept hammering in my brain. This isn't mine. This can't be mine. See, I'd been suspicious for months. Little things at first. Marissa staying late at the gym more often, her phone buzzing with texts she'd never let me see. The way she'd started wearing new lingerie that she'd hide when I got home from work. And then there was that night I came home early and found her on the couch with her friend Chase Morrison, sitting just a little too close, talking in whispers that stopped the moment I walked in. Chase Morrison, 6'2", ex-military, muscles on top of muscles, the kind of guy who made other men feel inadequate just by existing. He'd been hanging around our house a lot lately, always with some excuse, helping Marissa move furniture, fixing a leaky faucet, teaching her self-defense moves that seemed to require a lot of grappling on our living room floor. "Mr. Renner!" Dr. Shu's voice cut through my thoughts. "You need to leave. Now." I looked at him, then at the deformed thing he was trying to hide from Marissa, then back at him. "It's not mine, is it?" His silence was answer enough. I walked out of that delivery room and kept walking, through the hospital corridors, past the gift shop with its cheerful balloons and teddy bears, past the parking garage where I'd left my car. I walked all the way home, 3 miles through suburban Briarwood, past the manicured lawns and perfect houses where perfect families live perfect lives. Our house, my house, sat on Maple Street like something out of a magazine. 2 stories, white picket fence, rose bushes that Marissa tended with obsessive care. The American dream wrapped up in a mortgage and property taxes. I went straight to my home office and pulled out the DNA test kit I'd ordered online 2 months ago. Yeah, I'd been planning this. Call it paranoia, call it intuition, call it the slow realization that the woman I'd married 8 years ago had become a stranger. The test results came back 3 days later while Marissa was still in the hospital, recovering from what the doctors were calling complications. The baby, they never told me if it lived or died, and I never asked. Wasn't mine. 0% chance of paternity. I filed for divorce that same afternoon. Left a note on the kitchen counter. Hope the child's father takes care of you both. Packed my bags and moved in with my brother Tom, a detective with the Briarwood Police Department who lived in a cramped apartment above Murphy's Bar on the east side of town. You sure about this? Tom asked, helping me carry my suitcase up the narrow stairs. He was 3 years younger than me, but looked older, with gray streaking through his brown hair and lines around his eyes from too many years of seeing the worst in people. Sure as I can be about anything, I said. The DNA doesn't lie. DNA is one thing. Walking out on your wife right after she gives birth is another. People are going to talk. Let them talk. I know what I know. But I didn't know anything yet. Not really. The real truth was still coming, delivered in an anonymous envelope that showed up at Tom's apartment a week later. Inside were photographs, professional quality, taken with a telephoto lens. Marissa and Chase in the gym after hours, her legs wrapped around his waist as he pressed her against the mirrored wall. Marissa and Chase in his truck in the parking lot behind Elite Fitness, her head in his lap. Marissa and Chase in what looked like a hotel room, doing things that made my stomach turn. But it was the note that really got to me, written in block letters on plain white paper. You don't know the half of it. I stared at those photos until my eyes burned, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. For 8 years, I'd been the good husband, worked 60 hours a week to pay for the house, the car, the gym membership, the clothes, the vacations. Never cheated, never lied, never raised my voice, even when she pushed every button I had. And this was what I got for it, a cheating wife, a deformed baby that wasn't mine, and the whole town probably laughing behind my back about poor stupid Nick Renner who couldn't keep his woman satisfied. Well, I was done being poor stupid Nick Renner. Time to show Briarwood what happened when you pushed the wrong guy too far. The thing about small towns is that secrets don't stay secret long. By the time I'd been living at Tom's place for 2 weeks, the whole story had spread through Briarwood like wildfire. Of course, the version making the rounds wasn't exactly accurate. According to the gossip mill, I was the villain. Poor Marissa, abandoned by her heartless husband right after giving birth to a sick baby. Poor Marissa, left to deal with medical bills and a special needs child all by herself. Poor Marissa, whose husband was probably cheating on her anyway, because why else would a man just up and leave like that? I heard it all secondhand through Tom's partner, Detective Sarah Sloan, who had her ear to the ground in ways that would make a CIA operative jealous. Sarah was one of those cops who knew everyone's business, partly because it was her job and partly because she was naturally nosy. "They're saying you've been having an affair," she told me over coffee at Mel's Diner on a rainy Thursday morning, "with that new waitress at your restaurant, the redhead with the tattoos." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Jessica? She's 23 years old and engaged to a Marine. Since when has that stopped anyone?" Sarah stirred her coffee methodically, watching my reaction. "They're also saying you've been gambling, owe money to some dangerous people. That's why you really left." Who's they? Nicole Patterson, mainly. Marissa's best friend. She's been making the rounds, telling anyone who'll listen about what a bastard you are. Nicole Patterson. I should have known. She and Marissa had been inseparable since high school. Two blonde queens ruling their little kingdom of gossip and manufactured drama. Nicole was the type who thrived on other people's misery, always ready with a sympathetic ear and a sharp tongue. "What else is she saying?" Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice, even though the diner was nearly empty. "She's saying you haven't touched Marissa in months, that you've been sleeping in the guest room watching porn instead of paying attention to your wife. She's painting a picture of a marriage that was already over before the baby came." The worst part was, some of it was true. I had been sleeping in the guest room, but only because Marissa had started coming home at midnight smelling like another man's cologne. I had been distant, but only because every time I tried to talk to her about what was wrong, she'd shut down or start a fight about something completely unrelated. But the porn thing? That was pure Nicole, adding her own twisted details to make the story more salacious. "There's more," Sarah continued. "They're saying the baby's condition is your fault. Bad genes or something. Nicole's been telling people that Marissa's family has no history of birth defects, so it must have come from your side." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right, my bad genes, not the fact that the kid isn't even mine." "You haven't told anyone about the DNA test?" "Just you and Tom, and I'm keeping it that way for now." "Why? It would shut them up pretty quick." I stared out the window at the rain-soaked street. watching people hurry by with their umbrellas and their normal problems, because I want to know who else knows the truth. Someone sent me those photos, Sarah. Someone's been watching Marissa and Chase documenting their affair. I want to know who and why. That afternoon, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Started with Elite Fitness, the gym where Marissa taught her classes and where, according to those photos, she'd been getting a different kind of workout with Chase Morrison. The place was typical of its breed, all chrome and mirrors and motivational posters about pushing through the pain. The kind of place where suburban housewives came to work off their guilt about the wine they drank and the affairs they were contemplating. I knew most of the staff from the various gym parties and social events Marissa had dragged me to over the years. There was Brad, the manager, a former college football player who'd gone soft around the middle but still talked like he was heading to the NFL. There was Kelly, the perky brunette who taught yoga and had a habit of sleeping with her married students. And there was Liam Murphy, Chase's best friend and the gym's co-owner, a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a steroid commercial. Nick, Brad greeted me with the kind of forced enthusiasm that gym people seem to specialize in. Haven't seen you around lately. How's Marissa doing? We heard about the baby. She's managing, I said, which was true as far as I knew. Actually, I was hoping to talk to Chase. Is he around? Brad's smile flickered for just a second. Chase? I think he's in the back office. Want me to get him? That's okay. I'll find him. I made my way through the maze of exercise equipment, past the spinning room where Marissa had taught her classes, past the free weights where Chase liked to show off for his female admirers. The back office was really just a converted storage room with a desk and a filing cabinet, but it had a door that locked, which I suspected was its main attraction. I didn't knock. Chase was sitting at the desk, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, guilt, maybe a little fear. Nick, hey, how are you holding up, man? He was good. I had to give him that. The concerned friend act was almost convincing. If I hadn't seen those photos, I might have believed he actually cared about my well-being. I'm great, Chase. Really great. In fact, I've never been better. Something in my tone made him sit up straighter. Chase Morrison was used to being the alpha dog in every room he entered, but right now, he looked like a man who just realized he might be outmatched. That's good. That's really good, Nick. Marissa's been worried about you. We all have. I bet you have. I closed the door behind me and took a step closer to the desk. Tell me something, Chase. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? The color drained from his face. What? Nick, I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the crap. I pulled out one of the photos and slapped it down on the desk. I know, Chase. I know everything. He stared at the photo for a long moment, his jaw working like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. Finally, he looked up at me with something that might have been defiance. Look, Nick, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Do about it. Are you going to step up, take care of Marissa and the baby? Because I'm out. Done. Finished. Chase's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The baby, Nick, that's not, we never... Never what? Never thought about the consequences? Never considered that actions have results? I leaned forward, putting my hands on the desk. Here's what's going to happen, Chase. You're going to man up and take responsibility for what you've done, or I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you really are. You can't prove anything. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I can prove everything. Photos, timestamps, witness statements. I've got enough evidence to bury you so deep you'll never crawl out. That was a lie, but Chase didn't know that. He was sweating now, beads of perspiration forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. What do you want? I want you to stay away from me. I want you to take care of your responsibilities. And I want you to remember that I know who you really are. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Chase? If I find out you've been spreading lies about me around town, if I hear my name coming out of your mouth in any context, other than expressing your sincere regret for what you've done, I will end you, not physically. I'm not that kind of guy. But I will destroy your reputation, your business, your relationships, everything you care about. Are we clear? He nodded, not trusting his voice. I walked out of Elite Fitness feeling better than I had in months. For the first time since that nightmare in the delivery room, I felt like I had some control over the situation. But as I got in my car and drove back to Tom's apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. The photos, the anonymous note, the timing of it all. Someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, and I had no idea who or why. That night, I found out. The burner phone was hidden in a shoebox at the back of Marissa's closet, underneath a pile of old workout clothes that smelled like her perfume and betrayal. I found it while collecting the last of my personal items from the house, things I'd forgotten in my rush to get out after the divorce papers were filed. Marissa was still in the hospital, dealing with what the doctors euphemistically called postpartum complications. The baby, I'd learned through Tom's police connections, had died 3 days after birth. Nobody seemed particularly surprised by this news, which told me everything I needed to know about just how wrong things had been in that delivery room. The phone contained hundreds of text messages, going back almost a year. And they weren't just from Chase. There was Liam Murphy, Chase's best friend and business partner, sending photos of himself that no married woman should be receiving. There was Dr. Marcus Webb, Marissa's gynecologist, discussing private consultations that had nothing to do with medical care. There was even Coach Peterson from the local high school, a married father of 3 who apparently had a thing for fitness instructors. But the most disturbing messages were from someone listed in the contacts as Big Brother. At first, I thought it might be some kind of code name. Then I read the messages more carefully and realized the horrible truth. Big Brother was Marissa's actual brother, David. Her older brother, who lived in California and visited twice a year, always staying in our guest room, always making himself a little too comfortable in our house. The messages between them were intimate. Disturbingly intimate. They talked about their childhood, about things they'd done together that siblings definitely shouldn't do. They reminisced about hotel rooms and secret meetings. They made plans for David's next visit, plans that involved me being conveniently out of town on business. I sat on the edge of the bed I'd shared with Marissa for 8 years, holding that phone and feeling sick to my stomach. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I believed? How many times had I welcomed David into our home, cooked dinner for him, treated him like family while he was sleeping with my wife? The worst part was realizing that some of the messages were time-stamped from periods when Marissa had been acting strange, distant, different. Times when she'd claimed to be visiting her sister in Phoenix, but had actually been meeting David in hotel rooms across the state. I was still processing this information when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the bedroom window, I could see Nicole Patterson marching up the front walkway, her face set in the expression of righteous anger she'd perfected in high school. I pocketed the burner phone and went downstairs to meet her. "What are you doing here?" she demanded the moment I opened the front door. "You have no right to be in this house." "It's still my house until the divorce is final," I said calmly. "I'm just collecting my things. Marissa doesn't want to see you." "Marissa's not here." Nicole pushed past me into the living room, her eyes scanning the space like she was looking for evidence of some crime. "You're pathetic, you know that? Walking out on your wife when she needs you most. What kind of man does that?" "The kind who knows when he's being played." She spun around to face me, her blonde hair whipping dramatically. Nicole had always been a fan of dramatic gestures. "Played? Marissa loved you, Nick. She gave you the best years of her life, and this is how you repay her?" I almost laughed. "The best years of her life? Is that what you call screwing half the men in town?" "That's a lie." "Is it?" I pulled out the burner phone and scrolled to one of Chase's more explicit messages. "Want to see some proof?" Nicole's face went white, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what that is or where you got it, but I got it from your best friend's closet, along with photos and videos that would make a porn star blush." Another lie, but Nicole didn't need to know that. "How long have you known Nicole? How long have you been covering for her?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. That's why you've been spreading lies about me all over town, trying to make me the villain so nobody looks too closely at what Marissa's been doing." Nicole's composure cracked a little. "She was lonely, Nick. You were never here. Always working, always tired, always making excuses. What did you expect her to do?" "I expected her not to sleep with her brother." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Nicole's mouth fell open, and for the first time since I'd known her, she was speechless. "Yeah," I continued. "David, her loving big brother who comes to visit twice a year. Want to see those messages too? They're really something special." That's impossible." "Is it?" "Think about it, Nicole. Think about how they act when he's here. Think about the way they look at each other. Think about that time you caught them in the kitchen at 3 a.m, both of them half-dressed. and Marissa claimed she was just getting him a glass of water. I could see the wheels turning in her head, memories clicking into place, pieces of a puzzle she'd been ignoring for years. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Yeah, oh, God." I put the phone back in my pocket. "So here's what's going to happen, Nicole. You're going to stop spreading lies about me. You're going to tell everyone who'll listen that maybe, just maybe, there's more to this story than they know, and you're going to stay the heck away from me." But Marissa made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Nicole left without another word, her dramatic exit somewhat ruined by the fact that she stumbled on the front steps. I watched her drive away, then went back upstairs to finish packing. But I wasn't alone in the house. That was quite a performance. I spun around to find a woman standing in the bedroom doorway. She was tall, elegant, with dark hair and the kind of bone structure that suggested good breeding and expensive dentistry. It took me a moment to recognize her as Erica Morrison, Chase's wife. "How did you get in here?" "Back door. It was unlocked." She stepped into the room, moving with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "I've been waiting for you to find that phone." "You've been what?" "I sent you the photos, Nick, the anonymous package. I've been documenting my husband's affairs for months, building a case for my divorce attorney." I stared at her, trying to process this information. "You've been following Chase?" "Among other things." She sat down on the edge of the bed, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "Did you know that your wife has been blackmailing my husband?" "What?" "Oh, yes." "Threatening to tell me about their affair, unless he paid for her gym membership, her car payments, various other expenses. Chase has been throwing away money for months, trying to keep her quiet." The room felt like it was spinning. "But you already knew." "Of course I knew. I've known about all of them. Chase isn't nearly as clever as he thinks he is." She smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "We?" "You and I, Nick. The two people who've been betrayed, lied to, made fools of. Don't you think it's time we returned the favor?" I looked at this woman, this stranger, who'd been pulling strings behind the scenes, orchestrating revelations and manipulating events. Part of me was angry at being used, but a larger part was impressed by her thoroughness, her patience, her sheer ruthless intelligence. "What did you have in mind?" Erica's smile widened. "Revenge, Nick. Cold, calculated, absolutely devastating revenge." The plan Erica laid out was elegant in its simplicity and brutal in its thoroughness. We would destroy them systematically, using their own weaknesses against them, turning the town's gossip network into a tool that would leave our cheating spouses social pariahs. "The key," Erica explained over coffee at a diner 2 towns over where nobody would recognize us, "is to make it look natural, not like revenge, but like the inevitable consequences of their own actions finally catching up with them." She'd done her homework. Over the past 6 months, while I'd been obliviously managing my restaurant and trying to save my marriage, Erica had been building dossiers on everyone involved in the web of affairs surrounding elite fitness. She had photos, recordings, financial records, and enough dirt to bury half of Briarwood's social elite. "Chase isn't the only one," she told me, spreading out a collection of surveillance photos like a dealer laying out cards. "Liam Murphy has been running what amounts to a pay-for-play setup out of the gym's back rooms. Married women paying for personal training that involves sleeping with him in exchange for money. The photos were damning. I recognized several faces, wives of prominent businessmen, school board members, even the mayor's daughter-in-law, all of them caught in compromising positions with various gym employees. How did you get these? Security cameras. Amazing what people will do when they think nobody's watching. Erica sipped her coffee, her expression calm and businesslike. I've been planning my exit strategy for 2 years, ever since I found out about Chase's first affair. I knew I'd need evidence, leverage, insurance. And Marissa? Your wife was actually one of the smarter ones. She wasn't paying for companionship. She was getting paid. Chase, Liam, even that doctor you mentioned. They were all giving her money, gifts, covering her expenses. She turned adultery into a business model. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Bad enough that Marissa had been cheating, but to learn she'd been involved in something that resembled an escort arrangement, using our marriage as cover for what amounted to a side business, made me feel sick and stupid and furious all at once. There's more, Erica continued. The baby that died? According to the medical records I acquired, it wasn't just deformed. It was the product of severe inbreeding, the kind of genetic damage you only see when close relatives reproduce. David, her brother, yes, the timing matches up with his last visit. She pulled out another set of photos, these showing Marissa and David together at a hotel in Phoenix. I hired a private investigator to follow up on some of the messages from that phone. This has been going on for at least 5 years, probably longer. I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. What do you want from me, Erica? I want you to help me destroy them, all of them. Chase, Marissa, Liam, the whole corrupt network they've built. I want them to lose everything, their reputations, their businesses, their social standing, their sense of security. I want them to know what it feels like to be betrayed and humiliated. And what do we get out of it? Justice, closure, and in my case, a very favorable divorce settlement. She smiled, that cold smile again. Plus, the satisfaction of watching them burn. The first phase of our plan was simple: information warfare. We started by feeding carefully selected pieces of evidence to key gossips around town, making sure each revelation seemed to come from a different source. Sarah Sloan, Tom's partner, was our unwitting ally in this. I'd give her a tip about financial irregularities at Elite Fitness. She'd investigate and discover evidence that Erica had planted. The investigation would leak to reporters who'd start asking questions, which would lead to more revelations. Meanwhile, Erica was working her own network of contacts. The country club set, the charity board ladies, the social climbers who thrived on scandal. She'd drop hints about Marissa's financial arrangements with various men, always with just enough detail to be believable, but never enough to trace back to her. The beauty of it was that most of what we were revealing was true. We weren't manufacturing scandals. We were just shining light on scandals that already existed. The first major blow came when the state health department received an anonymous tip about unlicensed massage therapy being conducted at Elite Fitness. The subsequent investigation uncovered Liam's operation and resulted in the gym's license being suspended pending a full review. The second blow was financial. Erica had discovered that Chase had been embezzling from the gym's accounts to pay for his affairs. A few carefully placed documents led to an IRS audit and criminal charges for tax evasion. But the third blow was personal, and it was aimed directly at Marissa. I'd kept copies of all the messages from her burner phone, including the ones with her brother. When Marissa was finally released from the hospital and returned home, she found those messages printed out and mailed to her neighbors, her co-workers, her family members, and the members of her church. The reaction was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, Marissa had been fired from her job at Elite Fitness, not that there was much of a job left anyway, dropped by her personal training clients, and shunned by pretty much everyone she knew. Nicole Patterson, her best friend and chief defender, publicly distanced herself from Marissa after the brother revelations came to light. In a Facebook post that went viral throughout Briarwood, Nicole wrote, "I can no longer support or defend someone whose actions go against everything I believe in. Some betrayals are unforgivable." Chase didn't fare much better. The combination of criminal charges, public humiliation, and financial ruin had reduced him from the town's golden boy to a pariah. His personal training clients disappeared, his endorsement deals were canceled, and his social media accounts were flooded with angry comments from people who felt betrayed by his hypocrisy. But they weren't done fighting back. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening in the parking lot of Murphy's Bar, where I'd been having dinner with Tom. I was walking to my car when Chase appeared from behind a pickup truck, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You son of a witch!" he snarled, grabbing me by the shirt. "You destroyed my life." "You destroyed your own life," I replied calmly. "I just made sure people knew about it." "That was private. Those photos, those messages, you had no right." "I had every right. You were sleeping with my wife, remember?" Chase's grip tightened, and for a moment I thought he might actually throw a punch. But then Tom appeared beside us, his hand resting on his service tool. "Problem here, gentlemen?" Chase released me and stepped back, but his eyes were still full of fury. "This isn't over, Nick. You think you're so smart, you think you've won, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." "Enlighten me." "Marissa's not the only one with secrets. You want to play dirty? Fine. Let's see how you like it when everyone knows about your gambling debts, your drinking problem, your history of domestic violence." I laughed. "Good luck proving any of that, considering none of it's true. Truth is, whatever people believe. And I've got friends who are very good at making people believe things." That was when I realized Chase and his allies were planning to fight back with their own disinformation campaign. They were going to try to destroy my reputation the same way we destroyed theirs, except they were going to use lies instead of truth. Bring it on, I told him. But remember, I've got nothing left to lose. You, on the other hand, still have a few things that can be taken away. Chase's face went pale, and I knew he was thinking about Erica, about the divorce proceedings that would leave him with nothing, about the criminal charges that could put him in prison. He turned and walked away without another word. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real war was about to start. Chase's counterattack began 3 days later with a series of anonymous posts on social media claiming I'd been physically aggressive toward Marissa throughout our marriage. The posts included fake photos, pictures of bruises that had obviously been photoshopped onto images of Marissa's body, along with fabricated text messages where she supposedly confided her fears to friends. It was amateur hour stuff, easily debunked by anyone who looked closely. But in the age of social media, people don't look closely. They see a headline, share it, and move on. Within hours, #Justice for Marissa was trending in Briarwood's online community, and I was being painted as a monster who'd driven his wife to seek comfort in other men's arms. The lies were elaborate and well-coordinated. Chase had clearly recruited Nicole Patterson and several other members of Marissa's social circle to spread the story. They claimed I'd been controlling and manipulative, that I'd isolated Marissa from her friends and family, that I'd threatened to end her if she ever tried to leave. The domestic violence angle was particularly clever because it's the kind of accusation that's almost impossible to disprove. Even when people don't believe it, they think, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. It plants a seed of doubt that grows in the dark corners of people's minds. But Chase had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated both my intelligence and my resources. Erica and I had anticipated this move. We'd been preparing our own counterstrike, something so devastating that it would end the war before Chase could do any real damage to my reputation. It's time for the nuclear option, Erica told me when we met at our usual diner. Are you ready for this? I looked at the manila envelope she'd placed on the table between us. I knew what was inside, the most damaging evidence we'd collected, the revelations that would destroy not just Chase and Marissa, but several other prominent members of the community who'd been part of their network. What about collateral damage? What about it? These people made their choices. They participated in this corruption, this web of lies and betrayal. They don't deserve protection. She was right, of course. But unleashing this information would be like setting off a bomb in the middle of Briarwood's social structure. Marriages would end, careers would be ruined, families would be torn apart. Do it, I said. The story broke on Friday morning, courtesy of an investigative reporter from the state capitol who'd been fed information by Erica's contacts. The headline read, "Suburban Love Scandal, Elite Fitness at Center of Pay-for-Play Scheme." The article detailed everything. Liam Murphy's operation, the married women who'd paid for closeness, the financial arrangements, the blackmail schemes, the web of affairs that had entangled dozens of Briarwood's most respectable citizens. It included photos, financial records, and excerpts from the messages we'd collected. But the real bombshell was buried in the middle of the article. The revelation about Marissa and David's incestuous relationship, complete with DNA evidence showing that the deceased baby had been the product of their union. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Within hours, the story had been picked up by national news outlets. Briarwood was suddenly famous for all the wrong reasons, and everyone involved in the scandal was facing intense scrutiny from reporters, investigators, and their own neighbors. Chase's domestic violence claims against me disappeared overnight, overwhelmed by the much more sensational story of genetic abnormalities and family dysfunction. Nobody cared about his fake photos when they had real evidence of crimes and perversions to discuss. Marissa, who'd been staying with Nicole since her release from the hospital, was forced to move again when Nicole's landlord evicted her to avoid association with the scandal. She ended up in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, abandoned by her friends and facing potential criminal charges for her role in the illegal pay-for-play operation. Chase fared even worse. The combination of the scandal involving inappropriate relationships and his existing legal troubles made him unemployable in Briarwood. His wife's divorce proceedings accelerated, and Erica's attorney made sure that Chase would be left with nothing. No money, no property, no prospects. But they still had one card left to play, and they played it on a Saturday night when I was having dinner alone at Murphy's bar. I was sitting in a corner booth, enjoying a burger and trying to process the week's events, when Marissa walked in. She looked terrible, thin, pale, her usually perfect hair hanging limp around her face. She was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, cheap knockoffs that suggested her financial situation had become desperate. She spotted me immediately and walked over to my table with the kind of determined stride that meant trouble. "We need to talk," she said, sliding into the booth across from me without invitation. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. This has gone far enough, Nick. You've destroyed my life, Chase's life, the lives of innocent people who got caught up in your revenge fantasy." I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember why I'd once loved this woman. She was still beautiful, even worn down by recent events, but there was something hollow about her now, something broken that went deeper than the current crisis. "Innocent people?" I said. "Like your brother?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. The DNA evidence proves it, Marissa. That baby was David's, not mine, not Chase's, not any of your other boyfriends. Your brother's. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness. It doesn't define who I am." "A moment? Try 5 years of moments. Try a lifetime of lies and manipulation and betrayal." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but letting the anger show in my eyes. "You used me, Marissa. You used our marriage as cover for what was basically a pay-for-play operation. You let me believe I was going to be a father while you were carrying your brother's genetically damaged child. You destroyed everything we had, everything I believed in, and now you want to talk about innocent people?" Tears were running down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no lingering affection. Just a cold satisfaction at finally being able to say these things to her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." She was quiet for a long moment, wiping her eyes with a napkin from the dispenser on the table. When she looked up at me again, her expression had changed. The tears were gone, replaced by something harder, more calculating. "You think you've won," she said. "You think you've destroyed us and walked away clean. But you're wrong, Nick. You're going to pay for what you've done, and it's going to hurt more than anything I ever did to you." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." She stood up and walked out of the bar, leaving me alone with my burger and a growing sense of unease. Marissa in tears and apologies was one thing. I could handle that. But Marissa making threats was something else entirely. I called Erica as soon as I got back to Tom's apartment. "She's planning something," I told her. "Something big." "Let her plan. What can she do? She has no money, no allies, no credibility." "She's finished, Nick. They all are." But Erica was wrong. Marissa had one ally left, one person who'd stood by her through everything, who had his own reasons for wanting revenge against the people who'd destroyed his sister's life. David arrived in Briarwood on Sunday morning, and by Sunday night, our war had entered its final, most dangerous phase. David Morrison looked exactly like what he was, a man with nothing left to lose. Tall, lean, with the kind of weathered face that suggested hard living and harder choices. He'd driven straight through from California, 18 hours of interstate highways and truck stop coffee, fueled by rage and desperation, and the kind of love that crosses lines it should never cross. I first saw him at the grocery store on Sunday evening, standing in the parking lot next to a battered pickup truck with California plates. He was talking on his phone, his voice carrying across the asphalt in the still evening air. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "I want them to pay for what they did to her. All of them." I ducked behind a parked car and listened, my heart pounding as I realized what I was hearing. David wasn't just here to comfort his sister. He was here for revenge. "The husband first," he continued. "Then the wife who set them up. I want them to know what it feels like to lose everything." I waited until he drove away, then called Erica immediately. "He's here," I told her. "David's here, and he's planning something." "What kind of something?" "The kind that ends with people getting hurt. Or worse." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Erica spoke again, her voice was tight with concern. "We need to end this, Nick. Tonight. Before it gets out of hand." "How?" "I have an idea. But you're not going to like it." An hour later, I was sitting in my car outside the motel where Marissa was staying, waiting for David to show up. Erica's plan was simple and risky. We were going to confront them together, all four of us in one room, and settle this once and for all. The key, Erica had explained, is to make them understand that any move against us will result in complete destruction for them. Mutually assured destruction, if you will. She'd armed herself with the ultimate tool, a complete dossier on David, including evidence of his own criminal activities in California, his history of violence, his outstanding warrants. If he tried to hurt us, she'd make sure he spent the rest of his life in prison. David's pickup truck pulled into the motel parking lot at 9:30, right on schedule. I watched him get out and walk to room 237, where Marissa was waiting. They embraced in the doorway, and even from a distance, I could see that it wasn't the kind of hug you give a sibling. I gave them 10 minutes to settle in, then walked to the door and knocked. "Room service," I called out in a fake cheerful voice. The door opened to reveal David, his face twisted with surprise and rage. Me, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. We have everything to talk about." I pushed past him into the room where Marissa was sitting on the bed, looking small and frightened. "Hello, Marissa. Miss me?" "Get out," David snarled, moving to block the door. "Get out now, or I'll throw you out." "You'll try." I turned to face him, letting him see that I wasn't intimidated. "But before you do something stupid, you should know that my friend is waiting outside with enough evidence to put you away for 20 years. Assault and battery charges in Los Angeles, pills trafficking in San Diego, that armed robbery in Fresno that you thought nobody could connect to you." David's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Want to test that theory?" Before he could answer, there was another knock at the door. Erica's voice called out, "Housekeeping." "That's my cue," I said, opening the door to let her in. Erica entered the room like she owned it, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of confident smile that suggested she held all the cards. She looked around at the cheap furniture, the stained carpet, the general air of desperation that clung to everything. "Charming," she said. "Really captures the essence of your current situation." "What do you want?" Marissa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want this to end," Erica replied, setting her briefcase on the small table by the window. "I want all of us to walk away from this mess and get on with our lives." "After what you've done to us?" David stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "After you destroyed my sister's life?" "Your sister destroyed her own life. We just made sure everyone knew about it." Erica opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "But that's not why we're here. We're here because you're planning to hurt people, David, and that's where we draw the line." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. That's why you spent the afternoon buying fertilizer and diesel fuel. That's why you've been asking questions about Nick's work schedule and my home address. That's why you have a tool in your truck and enough ammunition to start a small war." David's face was a mask of rage and frustration. "You can't prove any of that." "I don't have to prove it. I just have to make one phone call to the FBI terrorism hotline, and they'll tear your life apart looking for evidence. Do you really want that kind of attention, given your history?" The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning unit and the sound of traffic on the highway outside. I could see David weighing his options, trying to figure out if Erica was bluffing, if he could take both of us before we could make that call. "Here's what's going to happen," Erica continued, her voice calm and businesslike. "You and Marissa are going to leave Briarwood tonight. You're going to drive back to California and never come back. You're going to disappear into whatever hole you crawled out of, and you're going to stay there." "And if we don't?" Marissa asked. "If you don't, I release everything, not just the information about your affairs and your relationship with your brother. Everything. David's criminal history, his current plans, the tools he's been stockpiling. I turn you both over to the authorities and let them sort it out." "You're bluffing," David said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Erica pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. "One call, David. That's all it takes. Do you want to bet your freedom on whether I'm bluffing?" The standoff lasted for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, David's shoulders sagged in defeat. "What about the money?" he asked. "Marissa has nothing. No job, no savings, nowhere to go." "That's not our problem," I said. "She made her choices." "I'll give her $10,000, Erica said unexpectedly. "Enough to get started somewhere else. But only if you leave tonight and never come back." David looked at his sister, then at us, then back at Marissa. I could see him doing the math, weighing the risks and benefits, trying to find a way out that didn't end with him in prison or worse. Fine, he said finally. We'll go. Smart choice. Erica pulled a cashier's check from her briefcase and handed it to Marissa. This should cover your immediate expenses. Use it wisely. Marissa took the check with trembling hands. Why are you doing this? Because despite everything you've done, I'm not a monster. I want you gone, not dead. David was already packing, throwing clothes into a duffel bag with quick, angry movements. This isn't over, he muttered. Someday, somehow, you'll pay for this. Maybe, Erica said, but not today. And not by your hand. 20 minutes later, we watched them drive away, David's pickup truck disappearing into the darkness beyond the motel parking lot. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anticlimax, like a storm that had been building for months had finally passed. Think they'll stay away? I asked. They'll stay away, Erica said confidently. David's not stupid, just desperate. He knows I wasn't bluffing about the evidence. And Marissa? Marissa will do whatever David tells her to do. She always has. We stood there in the parking lot for a few more minutes, watching the traffic on the highway, listening to the sounds of the night. Then Erica turned to me with that cold smile I'd come to know so well. So what now, Nick? What do you do with the rest of your life? I thought about that question as I drove back to Tom's apartment. What did I do now? My marriage was over, my wife was gone, my enemies were defeated. I had my reputation back, my freedom, my sense of justice satisfied. But I also had something else, the knowledge that I was capable of things I'd never imagined. The quiet restaurant manager who'd been pushed around and betrayed had discovered he could be ruthless when necessary, calculating when required, and absolutely merciless when provoked. The next morning, I started looking for a new apartment. It was time to rebuild my life, to figure out who Nick Renner was going to be now that the war was over. But first, I had one more piece of business to take care of. I drove to Elite Fitness, which was still closed pending the investigation, and found Chase Morrison sitting in his car in the empty parking lot. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that had seen better days. I parked next to him and got out. He rolled down his window but didn't say anything. They're gone, I told him. Marissa and David left town last night. Chase nodded slowly. Good. Maybe now things can get back to normal. Normal? I laughed. Chase, there's no normal anymore. You destroyed that when you decided to sleep with my wife. What do you want, Nick? You've won. You've destroyed my business, my marriage, my reputation. What more is there? I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that actions have consequences, that betraying people has a price, that thinking you're smarter than everyone else can cost you everything. I'll remember. Good, because if I ever see you again, if you ever try to rebuild your life in this town, if you ever even think about crossing me or mine, I will finish what I started. Are we clear? We're clear. I got back in my car and drove away, leaving Chase Morrison sitting alone in the parking lot of his ruined dreams. 3 months later, I opened my own restaurant on the other side of town. I called it The Last Honest Man, partly as a joke and partly as a promise to myself and my customers. The food was good, the service was better, and the owner had a reputation for dealing fairly with everyone who walked through the door. Erica Morrison got her divorce and moved to Florida, where she bought a beach house and started a consulting business helping other women navigate messy separations. We stayed in touch, exchanging Christmas cards and occasional emails, bonded by our shared experience of war and victory. Tom got promoted to detective sergeant and moved out of the apartment above Murphy's bar. I took over the lease and turned it into my permanent home, close enough to my restaurant to walk to work, but far enough from my old neighborhood to avoid unwanted memories. And sometimes, late at night, when the restaurant was closed and the bar downstairs was quiet, I'd sit by my window and think about the man I'd become. The man who'd learned that sometimes the only way to deal with betrayal was to betray right back. The man who'd discovered that revenge, properly executed, could be sweeter than forgiveness. I'd won my war, destroyed my enemies, and built a new life from the ashes of the old one. I was the last honest man in Briarwood, and I'd earned that title through sacrifice, sweat, and the kind of ruthless determination that most people never knew they possessed. It had cost me everything I thought I wanted, but it had given me something better. The knowledge of who I really was when pushed to the limit. And that knowledge was worth more than any marriage, any reputation, any comfortable lie I might have continued living. I was Nick Renner, restaurant owner, survivor, and the man who'd proven that sometimes the underdog doesn't just win. He destroys everything that tried to destroy him.